Howdy, everybody. I'm Kathryn Whitaker, and today's Lent at Lunch is like a Lent at Brunch with Laura Fanucci. She and I are going to talk about what it's like to be in Lent during a hard season. She knows a little bit about that. I know a little bit about that. I'm betting that you know a little bit about that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm really looking forward. Laura is a really gifted writer, and I think that you're going to love her. So let me get her on here, and then we'll get started. There she is. Hey,
Hey,
Laura.
how are you?
We made it happen.
We made it happen. Thanks
Welcome,
so
everyone.
much
This is
for
like Lent at, no
moving your
worries. It's like
lunch to
Lent at brunch.
brunch. I love it. It's so good. It's
Well,
so good.
but every good conversation happens at brunch. So I'm a believer that this will be a good one.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
Well, I know who you are, but I know that there are some people joining us that do not know who you are. So can you share a little bit about yourself, Laura?
Sure. So my name's Laura Kelly Fanucci. I'm a wife and a mother and a writer and a speaker. So, yeah, I live in Minnesota. We have five boys, very busy house. And yeah, I love to talk all things theology and vocation and grief. So I do a little bit of all of that. But yeah, that's a little bit of who I am.
I love that you're coming to us from your van. That feels very authentic. Like I'm a mom of five, and also this is my
And
van.
this is where I live. And I was thinking that when I was rattling off all my, like, here's who I am and what I do, I thought, well, this morning has all of that because I'm actually traveling for work today. I have some speaking stuff coming up. So I was like running around the house, doing the mom thing, getting everybody ready, getting me ready. Like I've lived a day and it's 9 o'clock. So it's good. It's great.
No, I think most women, not just mom, but I think most women live a day before lunch. So
That
this
is
is
so
appropriate
true.
that we're doing this at brunch. It's true. Like you look up and you're like, wow, look at all the things that I've done so far. Um, I I know that the reason that I wanted you specifically to come on here is one, because you are a really, I think, one of the most gifted writers that I read. I think that you have a really beautiful way of sharing the good parts and the hard parts of life and sharing them in a way that resonates with many people, and that is not easy to do. So you're also unafraid to talk about difficult things, but you speak about them in such a charitable, inviting way that I think it invites people in to maybe think differently, and I think that's a gift specifically that God has bestowed upon you, and I'm grateful that you share it with the world because we need people to do that. So
Oh,
that's why I wanted you on here.
thank you. That means a lot to me. I hold you in high esteem. So thank you, friend. I really appreciate that.
Well, I think it was many things that you shared, certainly during the pandemic, but some people may not know that you have twin girls. And I think that the the witnessing of how you walked through that, and I want you to share a little bit about them, but I think that that invited people in to consider that the hard parts could be sanctifying and that they weren't to be feared. But they were also hard. Like you didn't hide and you continue not to hide the difficult season of that. So if you could tell us a little bit about your twins.
Yeah, thank you. So Maggie and Abby, our girls were identical twins. They were born in 2016 and they developed a rare complication of identical twins. It's called twin to twin transfusion syndrome. So in utero, one twin gets too much blood and one doesn't get enough. So I had surgery, in utero surgery, to try to correct that when they were just 24 weeks old. And the surgery wasn't successful. So they had to be born by C-section really early. And I mean, NICU life, it's tenuous, it can end in beautiful ways and it can end in really heartbreaking ways. And our girls were just too sick to survive. And so Abby lived 2 days and Maggie lived just 1 day. And so that was February 2016 that they died. And I thought, I guess we should never put ourselves in these boxes. Like I thought I was the person who was acquainted with grief. My brother died of cancer when I was 10. And so, I grew up with a really profound grief in my life that most people didn't have. Most of my friends hadn't ever experienced anything like that. And I thought, okay, I kind of know what grief's about, but like losing those girls, even after having gone through a miscarriage, like I don't want to compare grief, but it just broke open this part of me that I didn't even know existed, to birth these babies and to hold them and to be trying to save them and then to have to let them go back to God was just, it was the hardest thing, you know, I ever had to do. And yet, like, at the same time, we had this experience when our second daughter was dying in the NICU, Abby, that we just had this profound, like, I still don't really know how to talk about it. It was this incredible joy that God somehow gave us, this grace, like in these hours that we were holding her. It was the happiest I've ever been in my life. Like, I get so emotional talking about it, because I think, dang, if that is what heaven is like, and that could only have been like a foretaste of it. If it's anything like all I want to do is get back there. All I want to do, like, the happiest I've ever been in my life. If I bottled all of that up at once, it couldn't have compared to that. It was so amazing. And like, that God gave us that gift, and Abby somehow helped to bring us that gift in her leaving this earthly life and passing into eternal life. Like, it just changed everything I thought about life and death. So, you know, I was already a person that had written through some hard things. Like, I wrote about infertility and I wrote through miscarriage. And so to me as a writer, like, it was just really natural to just, that was where, you know, I found healing and hope, was writing through that. And so somehow I just had to like hold all of that, that I was given this incredible grace that I've never experienced before or since. And this deep grief, like these two beautiful babies that we didn't get to raise. And like, I have 5 boys, but like, I really wanted those girls, you know? And so I have to live with that every day. Like, you know, it doesn't go away. Like, actually, it was funny when I was thinking about us coming on here today, and I was thinking about Lent. I was like, dang, this is part of why I struggle in Lent now since their deaths. Like, this time of year holds the rawest grief, because they died at the end of February. So like, March is not great. Like, you know, and our bodies keep the score. Like, my body remembers. And so I thought, wow, I was actually really grateful that you invited me into this conversation, because I thought, I don't think I've even combined in my mind how this time of year, when Lent always falls, is challenging, because it's not just the days that they were born and died that are hard. Like, it's remembering, oh man, this is when I was like in early grief and still had to get all my kids to school and like make people dinner, and I was just a wreck. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lent, I agree with you. The body does remember. In fact, I was just saying that this morning. My dad's birthday would have been Sunday, but it's also our oldest birthday. They share a birthday, and my dad would have been 75, and my oldest will be 21. So we had this big thing planned. Proof that you should celebrate when you have the moment instead of waiting to celebrate the joy when you think it's going to come. Like, you should just do it. But the body does remember. And, you know, it was some advice actually. Last year's Lent, my dad had just passed away, and then we entered Lent. And so Lent is a unique season, and that it asks us to enter into suffering. And when you're already in a place of suffering, and I know that some people watching, maybe it's grief, maybe it's a job loss, maybe it's a marriage in turmoil, maybe the world may see it as a small thing, but it's a big thing to you. Maybe it's a trying to find a spouse. It could be a number of any things. And I'm a firm believer that almost everyone participating in this today has something that they're carrying that's hard. And then, so we enter into the season of Lent, and it's like, really, Jesus? Like, you're going to ask me to seek deeper in this? And last year at Lent, I called Letitia Adams, because I said, some of you may know her. She lost her son by suicide, and she's been very transparent about the difficulty of that. And so I called her, and I was like, how do I do this, Letitia? Like, I don't know how to do this. And she said, I'll share with you some advice that a priest gave me that was very helpful. She said, you've already given up the thing. Like, you've already done that. So she said, instead, and this speaks to what you were saying, go find your joy. Do something that brings you joy. Because the whole point of Lent is not the checkbox of like, did I do this thing for 40 days? But it's, did I grow in relationship? And that was very healing for me going through. And I'm not giving anyone a pass, like saying, oh, you don't have to give up anything. Just do the thing that makes you happy. But her advice was, you're doing this hard thing already. So like, the giving up is already happening. So now I want you to seek out your joy. And she said, and I wanted to hug that priest. And I said, well, now I do too. So thank you for showing me that. So I love that you share about joy, Laura. So I really do want you to speak to that, because you shared it. The way that you share it, I think, is really encouraging and hopeful, that this thing that we deal with on this side is not the end, and that this joy that you experienced with your twins, that it is a foretaste of what is to come. But the way that you share it is pretty profound, I think.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's funny because I always think in some ways we got this miracle. It wasn't the one I wanted though. Like I wanted these babies are saved and and they're like bouncing around in my back seat now. And so God was working in this profound way. I mean, it changed my life. It changed everything I believe in. Like it just deepened. I'm just so convinced of God and heaven and all of it that I wish I could just press it into every person because I'm like, oh, it's real. Like it's so real and it's so amazing that I wish I could press that into all of us. And maybe, I love what that priest said. Wow, I love Letitia. I just, all of you in that together. Like, thank God that's just a grace to me too. But it strikes me like there is this holding together of joy and grief. And I think we have to remember that in Lent too. Like, I'm a cradle Catholic. And so I grew up with this, like, Lent is giving up. You got to do all the things. Lent depends on you. It's got to be hard. You're going to fail at it. Like, just a really, like,
That sounds healthy. That sounds
right?
healthy,
And
Laura.
like it's a marathon, like you got to do better at it than other people. You really got to make this like a Catholic marathon. And I see now, like, I guess I see this just outpouring of love in Lent that God gives us this chance to prepare for Easter. Like, Lent is not meant to be this difficult thing, this burden, this sacrifice just for itself. Like God doesn't ask those things, because what God wants us to do is prepare for Easter. And it's such a great mystery and the depth of love that's in Easter and in Jesus's dying and rising. Like that's why we're given Lent, is to get ready for that, because it's so profound that we have to get ourselves ready for it. Like you can't just show up on Easter Sunday. Well, you can, but you're going to miss a whole lot of the story. That then
It's funny that you said it because as a Protestant, growing up Protestant, we just showed up Easter
yeah,
Sunday. And when I met my husband, I was like, wait, you guys like that? Honestly, if we're going to pinpoint a moment that I felt like that I fell in love with the church, it was during Lent because it was very you know how me, I'm very intentional. And for me, it felt very purposeful. It felt like there's a purpose to this. There's a reason 40 days is significant and what we do. And then Holy Week completely blew my mind. I was like, wait, y'all have how many masses? So, or not one long mass, but
yeah,
the Triduum. And it was pretty awesome to me
yeah.
to think that it was an invitation. It wasn't like this burden, like, oh, I'm going to complain to everyone about what it is that I gave up and it's going to be awful. And that really did shift my focus. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, in some ways, I think it was, I've never articulated it until now, but you're helping me to see. I actually think it was falling more deeply in love with Easter and the Easter season, which happened after my daughters died, because I was like,
Mm.
I gotta like orient my whole life toward the resurrection, toward heaven, toward eternal life. Like I gotta do what I need to do to get there, because that's amazing. Like that's everything. And so I think like realizing how powerful resurrection is made me back up and say, okay, then what does the suffering of Christ mean? And what does like any participation that I have in that in this life through my own suffering, through the sacrifices of Lent, through this time of prayer and preparation, like it's oriented toward that, And so that I think has freed me up. Like Lent is just different every year. And there are some years that are just plain hard. Like right now, like you said, there's so much that people are going through. And I agree with you. I think we only ever see the tip of the iceberg. Most people just have this giant heap of heart underneath the surface. But you look around and the world is so full of suffering right now. And probably it always is, but right now we know about it, like it's in the
Right.
news, it's
And
before
we know
our eyes.
about when it's happening as it's happening.
Yes. And so you think like, aren't we already doing Lent? Haven't we been doing Lent for 2 years? Like this whole COVID mess, like, but the part that just wrecks me in Lent every year, I sit down at Ash Wednesday Mass and I'm like, I'm not going to cry. I'm going to cry. Like that first reading from the book of Joel, and it's the same every year at Ash Wednesday, and it starts out, even now, says the Lord, return to me with your whole heart. And I hear that even now, and it's like my whole life is just, I almost feel this flash of like, everything my life has held for the past year, everything that's going on in the world right now. And I just hear God being like, I see it. I see you. I see that right now is really hard. And even now, I want you to come back to me. Like, I want this for you. I want this closeness for us. And I feel like every year, like that first reading at Ash Wednesday just gets me. And I'm like, okay, Lord, here we go. Even now. All right. Even now, I'm here.
That reminded me, last year I did an interview with Father Rob Gallia, who's down in Australia. And I was asking him the children, what's your favorite part? And what's your favorite part of that liturgy to celebrate? And he said, Good Friday. He said, when the tomb is empty, he said, I go to the tabernacle. And he said, and I put my head on the tabernacle and I just lean in. And I was like, oh, I think of that all the time, like this. I think it's comforting, at least if you are in a hard season, or if you know that you will be. I'm guessing that most people know that it's coming. That there's nowhere that you go that God hasn't gone before. So even if the world doesn't understand what you're feeling, or even if you feel alone, you're not, because there's absolutely nothing that you go through that he doesn't understand. And so I think there's some comfort in knowing that the person that saves you, knows you, and doesn't just know you like, oh, I'm a fan of yours on Instagram, but like he created you, he knows you, and he desires to live in eternity with you. And so I think when we go through Lent, I find myself saying, Jesus, I trust in you, if only just out of obedience, because someday I'm going to say the words and they're going to click, or this year might be the year that I really believe that, or this moment. So I'm hoping that. Or what advice would you give to people, I think, that are maybe looking at Lent and feeling like it feels maybe extra hard this year, or it feels like they want to see the joy on the resurrection, but they're really wondering how they can get there? What would you share with them? I know that you have been through Lents that was easier to do than others. So maybe walk us through some of the things that you found to be convicting and helpful.
Yeah, a couple things that strike me are, like, I think that when it's a season like this that have such expectation around it, we often think this is like, I'm going to do all the things and that's going to, like, I'm going to win at Lent, if I get this all done. And it's just, I sort of have started to approach it the opposite. Like, I try to prepare for Lent and think about what I'm going to do, but I often find that this season, like, leads me, sometimes I'm called to do less at the beginning and build into more. Like, Lent is going to lead me into where I need to be. And I also think the fact that we have like these three pillars of Lent, these three practices, prayer and fasting and almsgiving. I think there are some Lents that are more in one area than another. There are some Lents where prayer might really be your focus, or prayer might be all you have because stuff is just falling apart and you're like, God, I don't even have the words right now, but like me just being with you in this big, hard thing, like that's prayer. And I'm just going to sit here with you. And that's the prayer. And there might be other years where you're like, you know what? Giving up this thing that I'm trying to fast from was really hard and really good. And I needed to do that. And that brought me closer to God. And then it struck me that this year, like, I was doing the thing where I was getting down on myself. I don't know that I'm doing enough. And then I realized, you know what? Like, because of when our girls' anniversary falls, like, we do this big fundraiser every year in their memory, just trying to do some good in the world. And I thought, we did this fundraiser that we're still doing with Catholic Relief Services for the Ukraine, because I just felt like there was so much suffering in the world that I wanted. And I love the work of Catholic Relief Services. And I realized, like, I have done so much around almsgiving this year, like not only giving more than we might usually give, but inviting other people to do it and to find hope in that. And I thought, well, dang, like that's my big Lenten practice that I did not go into this expecting. So I think sometimes letting go of our own expectations around Lent and seeing what God has for us is the most beautiful way to go through it. Because again, like, it's a gift. It's not like a trial or this like suffering that God wants to make us go through. Like, it can be a fire that's going to purge us from some things, but it's a gift that's given. And so to really ask, like, God, what do you want for me this Lent? What can I give to you? And it's going to be different every year. And so there are years that it's like, maybe God really does want you to be a little more gentle with yourself. And maybe there's years where God's like, you know what you need to give up and you need to do it.
He's like, your stern father, like,
Yeah,
seriously,
like,
you know what it
I
is.
love you and I'm going to need you to give that up because this is not good.
Laura, that's convicting. I think I saw a lot of people giving you affirmation on that I had not ever thought about. I was weighing prayer, fasting, almsgiving as equal planes, not thinking about, because for me this year it's been prayer. I have really grown in my prayer life, and certainly in the last year, but absolutely since the beginning of the year. I mean, I can feel the shift. And so thank you for validating. Thank you for, because I'm like, I mean, I gave up this thing and it's going pretty fine, whatever, but it's really the prayer for me. So isn't that a beautiful thing that maybe when you witness how Lent, I mean, I had a priest tell me this one time and I loved it. He was our pastor. He's now a bishop. Um, he said, you should never have to tell anyone what it is that you gave up for Lent, because at the end of the 40 days, they should be able to see it.
Woo!
So you
Wow.
should grow so much in faith, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, that people should look at you and see, just like the resurrection, that we see a changed Christ in front of us, that we also were transformed through Lent, so much so that we're a witness to the world. And I was like, gosh, dang it, Father Danny. Now I'm rethinking giving that thing up, but it was so convicting to me to know that it's a process. Like, this is, I mean, I know people will be like, this is going to be your best Lent ever. And I'm like, but is it? Or is it a series of Lents that you sort of build on, and you talk about leaning in and that invitation? Oh man, Laura, I could talk to you forever. I'm looking at the clock. I'm trying to keep us on time. I know that you have a busy day and we'll have to do this again, but I mean, I would invite people to find you online. So maybe tell them where they can go to read more about what it is you do, but also just read your really wise words.
Oh, thank you. Well, I agree. We could stay on here all day, but so I'm on Instagram at This Messy Grace. You can check out there, like from my profile, you can check out my author websites there, my books. I write a weekly newsletter on Substack that's called The Holy Labor. You can sign up for that there. Yeah, it's such a joy to be with you. And I love these conversations because there is so much out there that's like, live your best Lent and buy these 27 books. And believe me, I love books. I write them. Okay. But like, at the end of the day, it's about this conversion of heart. And I think that can happen even in the hardest seasons. Like, sometimes just remembering that God is with you. And this season, we think about Advent as being about Emmanuel and incarnation and God with us, but like, God's with us in this Lent. And if you're just struggling right now, like, just walking through these 40 days with Jesus might be exactly what you need to do, and just to be with him in that way. So I think there's a lot of possibility and a lot of hope still for us in however Lent looks this year.
I think that's maybe a good way to end it, is that even though, I mean, Laura, you remind us that there is good hope. We forget that sometimes in hard seasons, that it exists. And so I think the example of people who've gone through really like life altering, heartbreaking, open kind of things, and you see hope and joy in them, and you think, okay, if they can do it, and not only if they can do it, I can do it, but I can see Jesus in that. So I know that if he's not going to abandon them, he's not going to abandon me. So thanks for that example, and go live your best Lent, Laura. Go speak some truth into some people. I know you've got some good things that you're doing for the Lord, and I know that if people want to do Catholic Relief Services and support your family and your girls, they can go to your page to do that. But thanks for the gift of the conversation this morning. It was just as good as I had hoped it would be.
Oh, thank you, friend. This is fantastic. I'm so happy anytime I get to speak with you. So blessings on you.
Well, I'll do it
too.
Next time I'll be in my van and we'll make it a tour. How about that?
I love that. There are some other cars in this parking lot. Like, what is this woman doing? She's recorded the longest video of herself talking on her phone.
Maybe they just think you're on a FaceTime video.
Yeah.
Well, go do what you need to do today, and love you lots, Laura.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Love you too, friend. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.